The firing range on Galactic Defense Station Orpheus smelled like ionized metal and disappointment. I, Krell Voss of the Tarkonian Imperial Guard, stood with my clawed appendages crossed, watching the latest batch of recruits fumble through basic marksmanship qualifications. 43 cycles of military instruction had taught me one universal truth. Every species thought they were exceptional, until the targets started moving. "Next shooter," barked Instructor Gormath, his triple-jointed arms gesturing toward the firing line. That is when she walked up. The human female stood perhaps 5.7 feet tall, maybe 130 pounds if you counted her equipment. Her hair, dark brown and pulled into what humans call a ponytail, swayed as she approached the firing station. What caught my attention, however, was not her small stature. No. It was the absolutely ridiculous contraption she carried. The weapon looked like someone had attached a communications array to a standard rifle, then added optics that belonged on an observatory telescope, then said, "Why not throw in a few more accessories?" A bipod extended from the front. Strange cylindrical devices protruded from various mounting points. The scope, by the Void Lords, the scope alone probably cost more than my ceremonial armor. Recruit Venn, sitting beside me in the observation booth, let out a whistling laugh through his breathing slits. Look at the human's toy. Did she raid a technical supply depot before coming here? "Compensation," muttered Sergeant Thax, a four-armed Regellian known for his bluntness. "Weak species always bring the fanciest equipment, as if attachments make up for inferior biology." I said nothing, but I confess my mandibles clicked in amusement. The human, whose name tag read Maya Torres, began setting up her position with meticulous care. She deployed the bipod, adjusted it, readjusted it, then checked it again. She pulled out a small electronic device and aimed it downrange. She consulted a worn notebook covered in handwritten calculations. "This is a timed qualification," Gormath announced, his patience already wearing thin. "You have 4 minutes to engage 12 targets at varying distances. Begin when ready." Maya, to her credit, did not rush. She settled behind her weapon, with the kind of deliberation that would have gotten her killed in actual combat. Her body position looked awkward to my eyes. Humans lack the natural stability of a proper four-legged stance, yet she seemed to melt into the ground, becoming part of the surface beneath her. Venn leaned toward me, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. 20 credits says she hits less than half. 30 says she requests to restart after the first miss, Thax added. I studied the human more carefully. Something about her stillness felt wrong. No, not wrong. Different. Predatory, perhaps? But humans were not predators in the traditional sense. They were omnivores, scavengers, persistence hunters at best. They lacked proper claws, fangs, armored skin, or any decent natural weaponry. "Ready," Maya announced, her voice calm. The first target appeared at 200 meters. A standard pop-up silhouette, active for 3 seconds. Easy. The sound that erupted from her rifle was unexpected. Not the sharp crack of a standard kinetic weapon, but a deeper report that seemed to punch the air itself. Before my secondary eyelids could fully blink, the target displayed a perfect center mass hit. Target 2 appeared immediately. 300 meters, angled position. The rifle barked again. Hit. Venn's whistling stopped. Target 3 through 5 appeared simultaneously at varying distances between 150 and 400 meters. Maya's movements became a fluid cycle. Acquire, breathe, press, cycle the bolt, acquire again. Each motion seemed to flow into the next without wasted energy. 3 shots. 3 hits, all center mass. "Lucky," Thax muttered, but his secondary arms had stopped their dismissive gesturing. Target 6 appeared at 500 meters, partially obscured behind a barrier. Only a small portion of the silhouette showed. Maya fired, hit, target 7, 8, 9. Distances now pushing 600 meters, some targets appearing for only 2 seconds. Crack, crack, crack. Hit, hit, hit. I found myself leaning forward in my seat, my tactical analysis protocols engaging despite myself. The human was not simply shooting, she was reading the environment. Each time before she fired, her breathing would pause, her body would settle, and the weapon would discharge at what seemed like the exact optimal moment. Target 10 flashed onto the range at 700 meters, a distance where atmospheric conditions, projectile drop, and a dozen other factors turned shooting into advanced mathematics. Maya consulted nothing. No computer, no heads-up display, no targeting assistance. She made a minute adjustment to her scope, settled, and fired. The target registered a hit in the primary scoring zone. "Impossible," Venn said flatly. "The wind variance alone at that distance." "She is compensating," I heard myself say. "Look at her barrel position before each shot. She is adjusting for conditions manually." Target 11 appeared at an absurd 800 meters, moving laterally at combat speed. This target was designed to humble overconfident recruits, to teach them the limitations of standard infantry weapons. Most shooters never even got this far in the qualification. Maya tracked the movement. Her rifle followed smoothly, almost lazily. For a moment that stretched far too long, she did not fire. The target continued its lateral movement, eating up her available time. Then, in the half-second before the target would have disappeared, she pressed the trigger. Through my enhanced optical implants, I watched the projectile's trace. The round seemed to lead the target impossibly, arcing through space where nothing existed. Until the target moved into that exact space. The impact registered as a perfect central nervous system hit. Silence filled the observation booth. The kind of silence that accompanies witnessing something that should not be possible. Target 12 appeared. 900 meters, elevated position, wind gusts visible through the atmospheric sensors. Target exposure time, 2.5 seconds. Maya chambered her final round with mechanical precision. Her eye settled behind the scope. Her breathing slowed until I wondered if she had achieved some form of metabolic suspension. The rifle fired. For an agonizing moment, nothing happened. At that distance, the round's flight time was perceptible. A brief eternity where physics and ballistics engaged in their eternal dance. Then the target registered. Not just a hit, a perfect, absolute center mass impact that the computer system flagged as a precision shot. 12 for 12. Perfect score. 0 misses. Maya stood, cleared her weapon with practiced efficiency, and turned toward the booth where Instructor Gormath stood with his jaw hanging open in a very undignified manner. "Qualification complete, sir," she said, her tone suggesting this was the most normal thing in the universe. Gormath stared at his tablet, then at Maya, then back at his tablet. This must be a system error. Nobody shoots perfect on the advanced qualification. Even our top-rated Velcron sharpshooters average 9 out of 12. "Would you like me to run it again, sir?" Maya asked. "I have plenty of ammunition." "That will not be necessary," a new voice interjected. We all turned. Chief Weapons Instructor Dalvin stood in the doorway of the observation booth. A Caesarian war hero with 600 combat missions to his name, Dalvin was not someone who appeared for routine qualifications. His scaled hide bore the scars of 4 different wars, and his optical implant glowed with tactical data streams. He descended to the range floor with measured steps, his attention fixed entirely on Maya and her ridiculous, wonderful rifle. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her weapon. Maya hesitated, a flash of something, possessiveness, protectiveness, crossing her features. Then she carefully engaged the safety, removed the magazine, and handed the rifle to Dalvin. He examined it with the kind of reverence usually reserved for historical artifacts. His clawed digits traced over the modifications, the custom components, the worn finish that spoke of countless hours of use. "This is a precision instrument," he said quietly. "Not standard issue, not even close. Where did you acquire this?" "I built it, sir," Maya replied. "Well, assembled it, from various components. The barrel is a Krieger match grade in 6.5 Creedmoor. The action is a custom surgeon build. The stock is Macmillan, bedded and reinforced. The scope is a Schmidt and Bender with custom turrets I had machined for my specific ballistic profile." "You built this yourself?" Dalvin interrupted, genuine surprise coloring his tone. "A human civilian had access to these components?" Maya's expression shifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but something close. "Humans have a certain relationship with firearms, sir. Where I come from, precision rifle shooting is a discipline. A sport for some, a lifestyle for others. I have been doing this since I was 12. 12 cycles? Then interjected from the booth. Your species allows juveniles access to weapons? 12 years, Maya corrected. And yes, supervised at first, obviously. My father was a competitive shooter. He taught me that shooting is not about the weapon. It is about understanding physics, reading the environment, controlling your own biology. The rifle is just the tool that expresses that knowledge." Dalvin handed the weapon back to her with noticeably more respect than he showed most recruits. "How many rounds have you put through this particular rifle?" "Through this build? About 47,000. Through various rifles over my lifetime? Probably north of 300,000 rounds. Maybe more. I stopped counting after the first 100,000. The numbers meant nothing to Venn or Thax, but I knew. I had served with enough military specialists to understand what those numbers represented. That was not casual hobby shooting. That was professional-level dedication. That was someone who had spent years, perhaps decades, perfecting a single skill to an almost obsessive degree. "Your groupings," Dalvin continued, "at 700 meters. What is your average?" "Depends on conditions. On a calm day, half-minute of angle. So, about 3.5 inches. On a windy day, maybe 0.75 MOA if I read it right. 5 inches if I am having a bad day." More silence. Thax's secondary arms had begun an involuntary tremor, a Rigelian stress response. Dalvin's optical implant cycled through several colors as he processed this information. Most military sharpshooters in the Galactic Defense Force consider 1 minute of angle at 500 meters to be acceptable combat accuracy. "Different standards," Maya said with a slight shrug. "In precision rifle competition back home, 1 MOA is beginner level. The top shooters are running quarter MOA guns and reading wind down to half-mile-per-hour variations. When your competition is decided by fractions of an inch at 1,000 yards, you either get very good or you go broke buying ammunition while getting humiliated." She said this without arrogance, just stating facts, which somehow made it worse. Or better. I was not entirely sure which. Gormath finally found his voice. You are assigned to standard infantry training. Your file says nothing about specialist qualifications." "Because I do not have any, sir," Maya replied. "Not military ones, anyway. I have a few civilian competition wins, some instructor certifications, but I joined GDF as a basic recruit. Figured I would let my performance speak for itself, rather than making claims I could not back up." Dalvin's mandibles clicked in what I recognized as approval. A wise approach. Too many recruits arrive with inflated credentials and deflated abilities. He paused, his optical implant focusing on Maya with unsettling intensity. Tell me, recruit, have you ever engaged a living target? The question hung in the air like a gravitational anomaly. Maya's expression did not change, but something in her posture shifted. A slight stiffening, a barely perceptible tension. No, sir, she said quietly. Paper, steel, and reactive targets only. I have never pointed a weapon at anything I was not willing to destroy. And I have only been willing to destroy inanimate objects. The discipline I learned was about precision and control, not killing. Good, Dalvin said, nodding slowly. Then you understand the weight of what you can do. That is more important than the skill itself. He turned to Gormath. I am appropriating this recruit. She will be reassigned to the Advanced Marksmanship Program, pending full evaluation. Sir, the advanced program is for candidates with specialist training, Gormath protested weakly. She has only been here for 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, she has demonstrated more fundamental proficiency than most of your graduates achieve in 6 months. Dalvin's tone left no room for argument. I will handle the administrative details. Torres, report to Range 7 tomorrow at 0600. Bring your rifle and enough ammunition for a full diagnostic session. We will see exactly what you are capable of. Yes, sir, Maya replied, her voice steady despite what I suspected was significant internal excitement. As she collected her equipment and headed toward the exit, Ven turned to me with all 3 of his eyes wide. Did that actually just happen? It did, I confirmed, my tactical processors still analyzing what I had witnessed. But she is human, Thax said, as if this explained everything. Humans are. They are not. I mean, their military record is practically non-existent on the galactic stage. They have been part of the GDF for less than a decade. They have no famous warriors, no legendary battles, no reputation beyond being decent support troops. I watched Maya disappear through the range exit, that absurdly equipped rifle slung across her back with casual familiarity. Perhaps, I said slowly, we have not been paying attention to the right things. We measure species by their technology, their physical advantages, their historical military achievements. But what if a species, what if humans, developed their warfare capabilities differently? Not through superior strength or advanced weapons, but through refinement, obsession even, taking simple tools and mastering them to a degree that transcends the tool itself. That is ridiculous, Thax declared. Warfare requires strength, speed, natural advantages. Does it? I interrupted. Surprising. Myself. Or does warfare require the ability to make your enemy cease functioning? Which can be accomplished through strength, yes, or through placing a small projectile in exactly the right location from a distance where the enemy's strength becomes irrelevant. Ven's breathing slits flared in agitation. You are saying one human with a rifle is equivalent to a Rigelian shock trooper? No, I said carefully. I am saying one human with a rifle, with 47,000 rounds of practice behind that specific rifle, with the knowledge and dedication to read atmospheric conditions and calculate ballistic solutions in her head, might be considerably more dangerous than a Rigelian shock trooper, at least at any distance beyond arm's reach. We sat in uncomfortable silence as the next recruit, a Velcron with all the proper military bearing and none of Maya's quiet confidence, stepped up to the line with his standard-issue rifle. He managed 6 hits out of 12, which was considered above average. It looked pathetic now. That night, I accessed the Human Cultural Database, something I confess I had never bothered to do before. If one human civilian could demonstrate such frightening competence with a rifle, what else had we been missing about this species? What I found kept me awake well past my normal rest cycle. Humans, it turned out, had a very special relationship with projectile weapons, a relationship spanning thousands of their years. They had taken the simple concept of throwing objects at enemies and refined it into an art form, a science, a cultural phenomenon. They had competitions for shooting precision that made our military qualifications look like children's games. They had civilians who spent their personal resources to achieve levels of marksmanship that exceeded most military standards. And perhaps most disturbing, they did this for fun. They voluntarily spent thousands of their currency units, countless hours, and enormous mental effort to become better at shooting. Not because they were soldiers, not because they needed to hunt for survival, but because they enjoyed the challenge. They enjoyed the pursuit of perfection. What kind of species does that? What kind of species treats the ability to kill at long distance as a recreational hobby? I thought about Maya's calm demeanor, her methodical approach, her complete lack of arrogance despite possessing skills that would make her a legend in most military units. Then I thought about what Instructor Dalvin had whispered to Gormath as Maya left the range. I had enhanced auditory sensors. I heard it clearly. Only snipers move like that. Only people who have spent years behind a scope understand stillness that way. The humans have been breeding specialists without even trying, just through their cultural obsessions. He was right, and that thought terrified me far more than any conventional military threat ever had. Range 7 existed in a different reality than the standard qualification courses. Located in the eastern quadrant of Station Orpheus, it stretched across 12 kilometers of variable terrain, complete with atmospheric simulators, elevation changes, and environmental hazards that would make most recruits question their career choices. This was where the Galactic Defense Force trained its precision specialists, the shooters who could terminate hostile targets before conventional forces even knew combat had begun. I arrived at 0530, 30 minutes before Maya's scheduled evaluation. Call it professional curiosity. Call it the need to understand what I had witnessed the previous day. Honestly, I could not explain my own motivations, which troubled me more than I cared to admit. Chief Instructor Dalvin stood at the control station, manipulating holographic displays that showed the entire range layout. He noticed my approach but said nothing, simply gesturing toward an observation position. "You are early, Krelvos," he commented, his optical implant tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. "I wished to observe, sir. If permitted." "Permitted," he confirmed. "In fact, I would value your tactical assessment. You have combat experience in asymmetric warfare scenarios. Tell me what you see." What I saw, moments later, was Maya arriving with her rifle case and a backpack that probably weighed half her body mass. She wore standard utility fatigues, her hair again pulled back in that simple ponytail, her expression focused but not tense. "Recruit Torres, reporting as ordered, sir," she announced, snapping a salute that would have satisfied the most particular drill instructor. Dalvin returned the salute. "At ease. Today we determine if yesterday was exceptional performance or standard capability. You will engage targets at distances from 300 to 1,500 meters under various conditions. You will have limited time to calculate solutions. You will face scenarios designed to break concentration and test decision-making under pressure. Questions?" "No, sir. Ready when you are." Dalvin pulled up the first scenario. Target Alpha, distance 420 meters. Wind, variable, gusting from southwest at 8 to 15 miles per hour. Target exposure, 5 seconds. Engage when ready. Maya dropped into position with that same unsettling fluidity, deploying her bipod and settling behind the scope. She chambered around, her movements economical and precise. For perhaps 3 seconds, she remained absolutely motionless. Then she fired. The target registered a hit in the primary elimination zone. Center mass, slightly left to compensate for wind drift. Time from position to shot, 3.2 seconds, Dalvin noted. Acceptable. Target beta. Distance, 670 meters. Wind, calm. Target is partially obscured behind barrier, only head and upper torso visible. Assess and engage. Maya adjusted her position fractionally. This time she took 4 seconds before firing. Another perfect hit. Target gamma. Distance, 940 meters. Wind, crosswind from east, 12 miles per hour sustained. Target moving left to right at walking speed. You have 8 seconds. I watched Maya's breathing pattern change. She settled deeper into her position, tracking the target's movement. 6 seconds elapsed. 7. At 7.5 seconds, her rifle barked. The target registered a hit just as it reached the edge of its travel zone. Adequate, Dalvin said, though his tone suggested he meant considerably more than adequate. Now we increase difficulty. Multiple targets will appear simultaneously at various distances. You will prioritize based on threat assessment protocols. Targets designated red are high value, yellow are medium value, blue are low value. Your ammunition is limited. Choose wisely. The range erupted with targets, 12 of them, scattered across 1,000 meters of varied terrain, 3 red, 4 yellow, 5 blue. Maya did not panic, did not rush. Instead, she took 2 seconds to scan the entire field through her scope, then began engaging targets in a sequence that took me a moment to understand. She started with the furthest red target at 1,300 meters. The most difficult shot, the one most shooters would save for last if they attempted it at all. She fired, cycled her bolt, then immediately acquired the second red target at 900 meters. Fired again. The third red target appeared at only 400 meters, almost insultingly close after the previous shots. She put a round through it in less than 2 seconds. Then she methodically worked through the yellow targets, prioritizing by distance and exposure time rather than simple proximity. The blue targets she ignored completely until all higher value threats were eliminated. Total time, 41 seconds. Total rounds expended, 9. Total hits, 9. You left 3 targets active, Dalvin observed. Low-value targets at close range, sir, Maya replied calmly. In a real scenario, conventional infantry could handle those threats. My limited ammunition is better preserved for targets they cannot effectively engage. Resource management seemed more important than achieving a perfect score. Dalvin's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme approval in Caesarian body language. Correct assessment. Most recruits empty their weapons trying to hit everything, then find themselves useless when actual high-value targets appear. You think like an asset, not a soldier. Good. He paused, manipulating his controls to configure something new. Now we test your limitations. I am going to make you fail, Torres. I need to know where your breaking point exists. Understood? Yes, sir. I would expect nothing less. What followed was brutal. Dalvin threw scenarios at Maya that would have overwhelmed veteran shooters. Targets at extreme distances, with minimal exposure time. Environmental conditions that bordered on impossible. Situations requiring split-second decisions where every choice had consequences. Maya missed her first shot at the 90-minute mark. A target at 1,600 meters in gusting winds with only a 3-second exposure window. Her round passed just left of the silhouette, missing by perhaps 6 inches. She did not curse, did not show frustration. She simply chambered another round and waited for the next target. Why did you miss? Dalvin asked immediately. Misjudged the wind gradient at distance, sir, Maya replied without hesitation. I compensated for the wind speed at my position, but failed to account for the increased velocity at the target's elevation. Environmental reading error, not mechanical failure. Correct. Again, same target, same conditions. This time, Maya took an extra second. I saw her eyes flick to a small indicator on her scope, then back to the target. When she fired, the hit registered perfectly. Better. What changed? I used the mirage patterns visible through the scope to estimate wind speed at the target, rather than relying on conditions at my position. More accurate data input. Better solution. Dalvin's optical implant cycled through several colors. You can read mirage for wind estimation? That is an advanced technique rarely used outside specialized units. It is standard in long-range competition, sir. When you are shooting targets the size of dinner plates at a mile, you learn to read every environmental indicator available. Mirage, vegetation movement, dust patterns, even the way your own heat waves interact with the sight picture. Everything tells you something. I found myself leaning forward, fascinated despite my better judgment. This human, this small, seemingly fragile creature, spoke about reading an environment with the same intensity my species used when discussing territorial conquest. Dalvin continued the evaluation for another hour. He introduced moving targets, electronic countermeasures, simulated stress scenarios with sounds of combat, and incoming fire. Maya handled each challenge with the same methodical approach, sometimes succeeding brilliantly, occasionally failing, but always analyzing and adapting. At the 3-hour mark, Dalvin finally called a halt. Enough. Clear your weapon and approach the observation station. Maya complied, her movements showing the first signs of fatigue. Maintaining absolute stillness and concentration for 3 hours took a physical toll, regardless of species. When she reached the station, Dalvin pulled up a holographic display showing her complete performance metrics. Hit percentage, 87% across all scenarios. Average time to first shot, 3.8 seconds. Longest successful engagement, 1,460 meters. Decision-making score, 92% optimal choices. These numbers, Dalvin said slowly, would qualify you for immediate placement in our Tier 2 sniper program. Tier 1 remains reserved for candidates with actual combat experience, but your raw skill is undeniable. However, before I make any recommendations, I need you to answer something honestly. Why are you here? Maya blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Sir, you possess skills that took years to develop. Skills that have no practical civilian application in human society, unless I am misinformed. You could have remained on Earth, competed in your sport, lived comfortably. Instead, you joined a military organization, left your planet, and volunteered for an infantry position that would never utilize your actual capabilities. Why? For the first time since I had observed her, Maya's composure cracked slightly. Not much, just a brief hesitation, a flicker of something deeper behind her eyes. Because precision rifle shooting taught me something, sir, she began carefully. It taught me that humans are not naturally gifted at very much. We are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the toughest. We do not have built-in weapons or armor or enhanced senses. What we have is the ability to learn, to practice, to take something we are mediocre at and become exceptional through sheer dedication. She gestured to her rifle. This weapon does not make me special. Thousands of humans can shoot as well as I can. Some shoot better. What makes the difference is that we, as a species, we do not accept our limitations as permanent. We see a challenge, and we obsess over it until it stops being a challenge. When I heard that humanity had joined the Galactic Defense Force, that we were the new species trying to prove ourselves worthy of inclusion, I knew I had to be part of that. Because if there is one thing humans understand, it is being the underdog who has to work twice as hard to earn half the respect. Dalvin regarded her silently for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Krelvos, your assessment? I chose my words carefully. In Tarkonian tactical doctrine, we classify threats by their immediate danger versus their sustainable danger. A shock trooper presents immediate danger through overwhelming force, but a sniper presents sustainable danger, the ability to inflict casualties consistently over extended periods while remaining undetected and unengaged. If Torres represents a standard example of human marksmanship potential, then we have categorized humans incorrectly in our threat assessments. Explain, Dalvin commanded. We assumed humans would fill support roles, technical positions, areas where their lack of physical advantages would not matter. But if their cultural development has produced a population with widespread familiarity with precision weapons, if they have literally millions of civilians who practice marksmanship as recreation, then they represent a strategic asset we did not anticipate. Not as frontline troops, but as force multipliers. One human sniper positioned correctly could influence an entire battlefield without ever being detected. Maya looked uncomfortable with the analysis, but she did not contradict it. Dalvin's mandibles clicked again. An astute observation. The Galactic Defense Force has operated for 400 cycles under certain assumptions about how different species contribute to military effectiveness. Humans have been here for less than 10 cycles. We placed them where we thought they would fit, not where they might excel. He turned back to Maya. You are reassigned effective immediately. You will join the Advanced Reconnaissance Training Program. Your skills will be documented, analyzed, and used to develop new training protocols. You may also be asked to instruct other recruits, human and non-human, in precision marksmanship techniques. Questions? Just one, sir. Will I see actual deployment, or am I being turned into a training curiosity? Dalvin's expression shifted into what I recognized as a predatory smile. Oh, you will deploy, Torres. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and specialists with your capabilities do not sit in classrooms for long. But first, we need to understand if you are an anomaly, or if humanity has been hiding an entire military doctrine in plain sight, disguised as sporting competitions and civilian hobbies. I am not an anomaly, sir, Maya said quietly. I am just someone who took a hobby seriously. Back home, there are competition shooters who make me look like a beginner. There are hunters who have been reading wind and estimating range since they were children. There are military veterans who forgot more about fieldcraft than I will ever learn. If you want to see what humans can really do, wait until some of them start arriving with actual combat experience combined with our cultural background in marksmanship. The implications of that statement settled over the observation station like a heavy gravity field. I thought about Earth, a planet of 8 billion humans. If even a tiny fraction of them possessed skills comparable to Maya, if even 0.1% had spent years refining their ability to place projectiles with precision. That was 8 million potential snipers, 8 million individuals who could influence battlefields from distances where conventional forces could not respond. 8 million quiet, patient, dedicated shooters who treated killing at long range as a solvable problem rather than an impressive feat. Dalvin seemed to be having similar thoughts. Dismissed, Torres. Report to Building 7, Room 312 tomorrow at 0800 for in-processing into the advanced program. Bring your gear and prepare for an extended training cycle. You are about to become very busy. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Maya saluted, collected her equipment, and departed with the same unpretentious efficiency she had displayed throughout. After she left, Dalvin turned to me with an expression I had never seen on his scarred features. Uncertainty mixed with something that might have been concern. "We mocked her rifle setup," he said quietly. "All those attachments, all that customization. We assumed it was compensation for inadequacy, but it was not compensation. It was optimization. She built that weapon to extend her capabilities to their absolute maximum, then trained until she could utilize every fraction of performance it offered." "Yes, sir," I agreed. "And if human military doctrine follows similar patterns, if they approach warfare with the same obsessive refinement they apply to their hobbies, then we have underestimated them catastrophically," Dalvin finished. "Not because they are stronger or faster or more advanced, but because they are willing to dedicate absurd amounts of time and resources to becoming exceptional at very specific tasks. They turn limitations into specializations." He pulled up a star map showing human-controlled space. It was not impressive compared to the major powers, just a few dozen systems, a relatively new addition to galactic civilization. "I am going to recommend a comprehensive review of human capabilities," Dalvin continued. "Not just military records, but cultural analysis. If their civilians treat complex skills as entertainment, what does that tell us about their potential military applications? If a random recruit with no formal military training can perform at specialist levels, what happens when they start sending us their actual professionals?" I had no answer. None of us did. What we had witnessed was not superior technology or genetic advantage. It was something more subtle and perhaps more dangerous, a species that became exceptional through pure, stubborn dedication. They took their weaknesses and worked around them. They found what they could do and pushed it to extremes. 3 days later, I received a message from Dalvin. He had accessed Earth databases and found something he thought I should see. It was footage from a human competition called the Precision Rifle Series Championship. I watched humans engage targets at distances exceeding 2,000 meters. I watched them calculate solutions accounting for wind, temperature, barometric pressure, even the curvature of their planet. I watched them do this not for military purposes, not for survival, but for points and trophies and personal satisfaction. Then Dalvin sent me casualty projections, theoretical scenarios where human snipers were deployed in various combat situations. The numbers were disturbing. A single well-positioned human specialist could potentially inflict casualties far exceeding their individual value as a target. And if they worked in teams, if they coordinated, the galaxy had spent 400 cycles developing military doctrines based on conventional warfare, massed forces, technological superiority, overwhelming firepower applied at close to medium ranges. Humans had spent thousands of years figuring out how to kill things that were far away, often things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than themselves. They had refined it into science. They had made it into art. They had turned it into recreation. And now they were here, joining our military, bringing all that accumulated knowledge and cultural obsession with them. 6 months after Maya's evaluation, I saw her again. She wore the insignia of a certified GDF sniper instructor. She was leading a class of 20 recruits, 15 of them non-human, teaching them the fundamentals of long-range marksmanship. I stopped to observe. The recruits looked skeptical at first, just as we all had. This small human was going to teach them advanced combat techniques? Then she took them to the range. She showed them what proper fundamentals looked like. She demonstrated reading environmental conditions. She explained ballistic mathematics in terms anyone could understand. And then, because some lessons require demonstration, she engaged a target at 1,800 meters, in variable wind conditions, with 3 shots. All 3 hits clustered within a circle smaller than my fist. The skepticism evaporated. The recruits leaned forward, suddenly eager to learn from this unassuming human who had just made the impossible look routine. As I walked away, I realized something that would have seemed absurd just months earlier. The galaxy had not been mocking Maya's rifle setup. The galaxy had been staring at the future of asymmetric warfare without recognizing it. They had mocked her, right up until the moment an instructor whispered a truth that should have been obvious. Only snipers move like that. Only humans, it seemed, turned marksmanship into a cultural phenomenon. And now the galaxy would learn what that meant, one precisely placed round at a time.